Welcome to the Elite FTS Sports Performance Podcast.
Always a learning process for me on how to make the program better.
I'd have to say my number one piece of advice is make sure you want to be in this profession. Don't just volunteer 2 hours here or there. You got to see what the grind is like when you get in there at 6 a.m. and you're there until 6 p.m.
Because they put their best effort into it every time they walk in the weight room, we get great results.
Elite FTS, educating and outfitting the strongest athletes around the world.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Elite FTS Sports Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Watts. In our first episode, I had the privilege of interviewing none other than Dan John. Dan is one of the most popular authors and sought-after clinicians and coaches in the industry. He was an All-American discus thrower, and he has competed in Olympic lifting and Highland Games at the highest level. Dan is still the American record holder for the Weight Pentathlon. Dan John is the author of Intervention, Never Let Go, and Mass Made Simple. He also co-authored Easy Strength with Pavel. All of these books are available on our site, elitefts.com. I had the opportunity to sit down with Dan on the campus of Denison University this June during John Powell's throwing camp. We discussed reasons for writing Intervention, his 4 quadrants, youth sports in America, essentials for personal trainers, periodization for football, assessment techniques, and teaching the hip hinge. Enjoy. Talk to us a little bit about how you got involved with this camp, being here, and some of the aspects of the camp and where it started.
Well, it was '93, and I was a young father, and we were kind of struggling. I was trying to struggle to keep the balance in. I was still competing at a pretty high level, and I had just had my second daughter born. And I talked to Tiff, my wife, and I said, you know, if I'm gonna keep throwing, I need to reinvent myself. I need to look at things differently, and I saw the John Powell camp in the Track and Field News, and I just called the number, and John answered. We talked for 45 minutes. I'd met John a long time ago, and of course I knew him coming up, of course. And so I came out here, and I was a camper. I had someone bang on my door in the morning, and I had a curfew, and I was, 36 years old, 35 years old, and I did every drill, and I ran hills, and I did push-ups when I threw it out of bounds. And during the camp, John came aside to me and said, I want you to coach at this camp from now on. And that's how it started. So I'm in my 21st year here. 21 years. I mean, that happened fast. And the idea back in '93 is I was trying to learn to get more work in less time. And it was really instructive for me, because now I think I use that in every aspect of my coaching. You know, I hate it when people say that, oh, I only have 20 hours to train a week. 20 hours to train a week? That's a lot of training time. And then you watch them train. They're not training. They're 20 hours a week of foam rolling and doing, I need to tape up my hyper-irrigated nonsense. So that's how I got here, and here we are 21 years later. We've worked with changed a lot of lives, a lot of state champions, a lot of Olympians come out of our camp. It's been a great time. You're coming on the last day of 2 weeks, so all of our voices are a little scratchy.
Sure.
You know, we all got that kind of dull eye, and of course, it's a humid day with rain, so it's Denison.
Sure. Talk a little bit about just the Intervention book, and we talked before about why you felt the need to write that book, and really what kind of overview of the book and behind it. So,
well, I just feel that we're really falling apart in the strength conditioning world. The entry level is so easy. You know, you can just show up at a gym, and the funny thing is, I'm fine with that. I'm fine if you've been lifting a long time. You watch a kid squat, and you give him some pointers and help him squat. But now what happens is that kid goes home, opens a website, starts a blog, and has 7 ebooks out by the end of the week. You know, so what happens is intervention literally means intervention. Like you've been drinking too much, or you've been, methamphetamine. It means I sit you down And I tell you, pardon me, and I tell you that you're a 47-year-old man and you're telling me you want to train like, you know, an Olympic gymnast plus Olympic lifter plus bodybuilder, and of course their programs aren't good enough. Yeah, I said this yesterday about this idiotic program I saw from one of our college throwers. You know, basically they took the Bulgarian Olympic lifting system, you know, West Side powerlifting, and threw some bodybuilding on top of it, because none of those programs by themselves are good enough, you know. And so you just got to sit down and say, well, you know, what's important, what's basic, where are you, which is the big key. And I always say on assessment, you know, goal setting is point A to point B. Point B the goal. Point A is the assessment, and we ignore it. We don't talk about where you are, and that's the book Intervention is based on the idea. Convincing someone that they are who they are, and then let's talk about your goal set. That doesn't mean you can't get your goal, but let's be reasonable here about the process. And so that's what the book is.
Yeah, and it seemed like it came through with the, you know, in Easy Strength you had talked about the quadrants, and it seemed like the intervention was, you know, playing off a little bit of people not understanding what quadrant. Can you just expand a little bit on the quadrants?
Yeah, it's a long process to get for me to come up with the quadrants, but it was always the issue of we kept doing more and more and more and more, and you can't help yourself. I mean, I'm going to go to a convention this weekend, and I'm going to come away and go, oh, we got to throw this in. I mean, this is too great. I'm not ripping on anything, but let's just throw, for example, battling ropes. And I like them. I think they have great value. But I'm going to go to this convention and see battling ropes, and it's going to be, and my jaw's going to drop. I'm going to do them, and I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to throw them in my program. Do discus throwers need battling ropes? No. Now you can say, no, yes they do. This one discus thrower doesn't. That's great.
Sure.
But what happens is you fall in love with all these new toys. So quadrant one is lots of qualities at a low level. That's basically like a high school PE program. It's a time in life, quadrant one, where you should really expand and see everything you can. I mean, you should probably learn to kayak, basics, sorry, swim, bike, first aid, survival skills. That's quadrant one.
You would put tumbling in that.
Tumbling, it would be every organized sport. You should know the rules for basically every Olympic sport. Maybe you might not understand team handball, but you should recognize the game. You know that's team handball, and it's different than, say, volleyball.
Sure.
It's sort of kind of like basketball, which you should understand. It's a time to really be exposed, and you should, and I think it's a huge mistake not to have a serious quadrant one in your life. And that way, you should learn probably how to squat deeply then. You should probably learn how to bench, front squat. All those things you should learn, but calisthenics is in there too.
Sure.
For the rest of your life, you can use those gems for your fitness goals for the rest of your life. And you really need to learn them correctly. Quadrant two is the problem maker. It's collision sports and collision occupations. Lots and lots and lots of qualities at really high levels. And I tell this to people all the time. Most people I talk to on the internet are not strong enough to play high school football. They're just not. You know, I expect the varsity football player, now this is 3A Utah football, to be able to clean 205 pounds, front squat it, and bench it. I get guys all the time, I'm not strong enough to be a high school football player. Right. I know that. Why don't you know that? So these guys want all these advanced training programs where really the basics is the toolkit they ever need. So if you're in special forces, special operations, you're a SWAT guy, you're a football player, that's quadrant two. And you really do have to do a lot of things at a level that's stunning, you know. So, you know, when I'm prepping a football player, we tumble probably, a tumbling only session every 2 weeks where they just tumble. But tumbling is part of every training session. Sure. Fall, cartwheels are part of the program. But we also do hurdle work. Oh, really? Hurdles? What? Yeah, and we also do the Olympic lifts and the power lifts. Plus, they also need to do some armor building, you know, some basic
absolutely
bodybuilding with the weights pounding you. But they also need to do pull-ups. But then they also have to know, I mean, the number of rules that you need to know to play a football game staggers you. There's a rule, 7 men on the line of scrimmage, and you tell everybody the rule, and then you show them the rule, and then you do hundreds of plays that are assumed that they know the wide receiver lines up on the line of scrimmage. And yet in the first football game, he gets a 5-yard penalty because he didn't line up on the line of scrimmage.
Sure.
Well, how did that happen? Well, because there are so many things going on in a football player. So, and then from there is the one I think most people are. This would be fat loss clients, is discus throwers, and this is general population, is quadrant 3. Reasonable level strength and very, very few qualities. A discus thrower needs to be strong and have good technique. A fat loss client needs to do inefficient exercise and have a food journal. Those are the two, how you define inefficient exercise, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
But from there, you just have to do it. Once you're over 27, you're in quadrant 3. If you're a football player and you're still learning the rules of the game, you're not really in the NFL. If you say you want to train like a Navy SEAL, but you can't lock and load, you're not really a Navy SEAL. Because it's not just, that Top Gun thing. And they all think it's Top Gun, that scene in Top Gun where they high-five each other. My daughter has a funny game they play in college, watching Top Gun, but I won't give the details of how it's a drinking game.
Yeah, sure.
But it's actually kind of funny. Quadrant 4 is the rare air. That's 1 or 2 qualities, and that's at the highest levels the humans can achieve. I would put that as like 100-meter runners. They need to be fast.
Okay.
If I see you coaching your sprinters and you do agility work, you're too stupid to be a sprint coach. Because you don't need agility work. And yet you see it. And you'll see kids doing shuffle drills for sprinting. Shuffle, there's no stopping. It's go. There's no stop and go. It's go and then you slow down. And you got plenty of time. You can run a whole lap slowing down if you like. I would say it's the single lift powerlifter guys. The guys who specialize.
Yes.
And I'd probably put the Olympic lifts up there too. Where you're talking about 1, maybe 2 qualities. When people say that Olympic lifting is really technical, I think, well, it might be if you're 50 and learning it, but if you grew up in it, it's not technical at all. You talk to an elite Olympic lifter, they'll look at you. It's funny. When I had a good buddy who was a Soviet, and he grew up in their system, and he one time said, the problem Americans have is you guys think this is, it's very, and he kind of made this little sounds and went, like this,
Yeah.
And that's how he understands the Olympic lifts. Use your words. But to him, you couldn't use words. It was,
Just the movement.
It's just the movement. And so that's quadrant 4. Most people think they're quadrant 2. They want to act like a real Navy SEAL, as it says in the ads.
Join the Navy. Don't want to be the first.
F the Navy, and they'll help you.
Or be a Navy SEAL.
Most people, that muscle and fitness thing that used to come out and train like the NFL guys every year comes out in about August, and you know by the words on the page, it's all just invented. It's just invented. They don't train like that. They have a lot of machines in the NFL because they can't. They're huge engines and they can't afford to get hurt. And that's fine. But if you want to train like an NFL player, be born 6'4", weight 250 with a 4.340. That's fine. I don't know why it's such a problem. To me, it's funny. I say the same thing. You want to be in the NBA, just get yourself up to 7'3", and then we'll talk about those other skills.
Yeah.
But people laugh when I say this, but most people aren't born to do these jobs. And then they don't, it's like these guys who don't train like Navy SEALs, and I'm talking about nutrition. They eat 6 meals a day, and they branch chain amino acids before they train. They do all this. What makes Navy SEALs and those guys, what makes NFLs great, usually is deprivation. When you go into an NFL locker room, it's very rare that rich kids. It's a room full of former rich kids.
Good point.
Usually it's guys.
It's about a lot of sports.
Yeah,
sure.
That football is lunch money. That football is dinner. It's a lot, and deprivation leads to increased capacity. The part of the thing that allows like, special forces guys to do things is they've starved a long time. They've eaten bugs to get, and so for the rest of their career, they can handle just about anything. It's a lesson I learned in college. I mean, this steeplechase guy who had done a tour in Vietnam. I was right there on the edge of that. So he was older than us. And I used to think that eating bagged lunches on road trips was a step down because, here I am, I'm an elite athlete. And I remember one time he kind of looked and goes, this is really kind of good, compared to not eating. And I was like, okay, ego, put it back in my back pocket, forget it for a while. I think what he meant to say is I was complete pussy, but I can't. But he said it much nicer.
He was more tactful.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, just expand. This would be to expand on each quadrant. With quadrant 1, I know that the one question I'm always interested. I've asked you about this before. Is at that high school and younger ages, as far as we talked about early specialization and seasons being longer, and with a combination of phys ed and youth sports in America. Just some thoughts on where you think it's going and what to fix it.
Mark, we're in deep trouble. I just think here at camp this week, I already had a couple of girls say they can't throw anymore because they're elite volleyball players. Every single state probably has now dozens of elite volleyball programs, and the parents buy into it because they don't know any better. It's funny because I'll have parents tell me how to be a Division I athlete. Well, you don't understand how it is today, Dan. Really? I don't understand what it is to be a Division I athlete. How would you think I don't understand that? Well, today in this day and age, you got to be year round. Really? In the discus, really? Because see, what we did is we just threw it really far, and then track coaches would call you and say, "Would you mind coming and throwing really far for my school?" But these poor kids, they do year-round basketball, year-round volleyball. And what happens is, and I'm seeing it with one of the athletes I had here, this athlete started year-round specialization, say in the 9th grade, year-round thrower. I think it's terrible. And it doesn't matter what the sport is. I think you're crazy to go year-round.
Sure.
And what happened is, and here's why, because there's no spark after it. So you start Olympic lifting in the 9th grade, you start powerlifting in the 9th grade, you start year-round throwing. Where's that next leap going to happen? I figured my sophomore year, I improved early in the season as a discus thrower because my mom gave me some money and I drove to San Mateo and I bought discus throwing shoes. I was one of the few people to have discus throwing shoes in my sophomore year because no one had them. Well, nowadays these kids go through 5 and 6 pairs of throwing shoes in a season.
Sure.
I'm the only person that had throwing shoes.
Yeah.
In fact, I got made fun of because they were blue with these hyper neon stripes on them. People thought they were kind of dorky, It's like, man, I thought they were fabulous. They actually helped me throw far.
Right.
So I improved because I had throwing shoes. I improved markedly when I learned the Olympic lifts in my freshman year of college.
Sure.
Just exploded. But what happens is you to grow this athletic engine, this athletic organism, you need to have a lot of qualities developed. But if you throw them all on top of the athlete too young, there's no way to now what? So you've been snatching for 5-6 years. Snatching doesn't have that snap, that bang that it used to have.
Sure, the spark.
Yeah. So whatever that is, so you lose all that. And the other thing too, and I've often thought this, is when I wrestled in high school, track practice after wrestling, I don't care what they tell you to do. It's just not that hard. So if you think like here at camp, sometimes the kids will complain about how hard the days are, and you look at them like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Compared to, when I played high school football, we weren't allowed water during practice because it would make you soft.
Sure. Standard.
Yeah. Our defensive coach one time allowed us to sneak around the shed to get a gulp of water. And he said, don't let the head coach know, he'll fire me. Well, nowadays, these athletes go through the bottles of Gatorade these kids drink a day.
Yeah.
Their moms will show up at this camp, and the moms will walk in with, if I said cases of Gatorade, this is a 3-day camp. These kids are knocking down probably in excess of 1,000 extra calories a day to hydrate which is a lot like drinking water. So what happens is that if you just do your sport all year, you miss the other qualities. One of the things I always like about football is that you need to have a wide and narrow focus as an athlete within seconds. So you got to see the big picture, then you got to zero in. And while you're zeroing in, your spider senses better be on, because there's someone out there trying to take your head off.
Yeah.
You can always tell a sophomore on a kickoff team, I'm the first one down the field. I'm the first one down the field. I'm going to get my name in the paper. And they don't know that, yeah, you're the first one down because everyone's smarter than you. Yeah. And they're the ones that get taken out. Yeah. Wrestling. The rest you teaches you increased capacity. Then you come to track and field and you learn really how fast you truly are. Then you go back to football after those two sports with, you're a lot better at hand fighting. You've really learned how to be a better sprinter. You are now a better football player.
Those skills are transferable.
All of them. I think, I played keeper, we used to call it goalie, but now it's called keeper in soccer. And I learned some skills that I think help me in all my other sports. Okay?
Absolutely.
Once I stepped on the platform as an Olympic lifter, I learned that wide focus has no value in the Olympic lifts. It's laser beam. Well, as a discus thrower, what kind of focus do I need? And it really allowed that discussion. Olympic lifting not only made me better physically, but it also gave me a mental set that I missed. So if you only do one sport, you never get that mental set. And if you're on some elite, your folks are paying $1,200 a month for you to be in an elite volleyball. God, I just can't stomach the word elite volleyball program, and you always stay in nice hotels, and there's breakfast, lunch, dinner, 75 Gatorades a day. That doesn't prepare you for the realities of elite sport. When, I've competed with no sleep. There's stuff goes on.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge mistake. I can go on for hours and just keep knocking down why early specialization is stupid. The research supports it and always has that it's a bad idea. But these parents, now here's the bottom line, Mark. It comes down to this. My last year coaching as a head track coach, my stipend was $1,200. Of which, we all laugh about, and that was actually, I thought was pretty good. Yeah. That doesn't cover my Jack Daniels bill for coaching as a head track, because you just constantly, head track coach is the worst job you can ever have. I had a parent tell me that their monthly bill for volleyball was $1,200. Now, if you're giving me $1,200, and I've got 60 girls, of course I'm going to tell you this is an elite program, and we're going to get you a scholarship.
Sure.
Here's the funny thing. I'm a volunteer coach now at a NAIA school, and I love it. I really enjoy it. One of my former athletes shows up, and I go, listen, you never did anything. What are you doing here? Well, this person is a walk-on at an NAIA school. She would never do any other sport because her mom told me she's going to be a Division I athlete. So they spent, do the math, 1,200 times 12 for probably 8 or 9 years. Now they're struggling to pay the bill for her to go to college. If you take that 12 times 12, that 14 grand a year for 10 years, and I don't know, put it under your bed, you can pay for college. Even here at Denison.
Yeah.
Even here at Denison. Yeah. Very expensive school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like it's a showcase instead of actual, the competition and.
You overtrain these girls too.
Yeah.
These guys go to a clinic and they come back, and it always makes me mad when I see when I see jump training at a basketball team or a volleyball team. Really?
They don't jump in their sport, right? Yeah. It's amazing.
So, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure. No, I was just going to kind of, because again, this is a topic I think we're both pretty passionate about, but moving on to, skipping over quadrant 2 and moving on to quadrant 3 as far as where most people, I know you had talked, and you had written an article, and you had talked about 3 things as far as for personal trainers. You talked about basically results. You had talked about, mastery, and you talked about community as far as, training.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing.
And I think that I think it's important to maybe I thought that would be good maybe to expand on, especially when we talk about that quadrant 3 as far as, what kind of trainers, what mistakes they make when they got clients and whatnot, because I think that happens a lot.
The number one phrase, and I didn't understand it for years. My wife wanted to punch me, I think. Don't make me look stupid. Don't make me look stupid. And I think what happens, I think one of the areas trainers don't understand is that people not only want mastery, we strive for mastery. And that's the funnest thing about, like at the discus camp setting, is watching someone improve so much. Yesterday we had one of those moments, Steve-O has on him, where I was working with a thrower, and all of a sudden you could just see that light bulb pop on. It's like, yeah, and there's no words to, they kind of, and you kind of just stare at each other and nod. That's it. But there's a secondary part of it. Don't make me look stupid. And I didn't understand that. And in the article I wrote, I try to be really clear about it, about these, I'm a big believer now back to one gender settings, because female athletes without males around train way too. I mean, the intensity scares you.
Sure.
Male athletes, we call it prairie dogging. If there's a female in there, the whole time their head is popping up.
Sure, absolutely.
And so you just eliminate it. Because what happens is, there's nothing wrong with Edna over here. She's a very nice girl. She's 12 years old. She weighs 18 pounds. And you got her in the varsity football weightlifting class. She doesn't know how to clean. Now, you teach her how to clean. She does a beautiful clean. And that boy over there just did 315 for 2. And Edna does 65 pounds, which is a good lift.
Sure.
And she feels stupid. Why? Because she knows that's a lot more weight there, and I must be weak. So when people say don't make me look stupid, it can be by movement, and it can be by load.
Right.
But here's, I think the genius of Bikram yoga, which I'm a huge fan of from a teaching model.
Right.
Here's the 26 poses. Every time you come in, you can actually correct the instructor sometimes. You'll say, oh, we forgot the second round of leaping monkey backwards or whatever it is, because you've done it so many times, and over and over and over, you become more and more masterful.
Sure.
And I think that's a huge missing element. The upside of doing the Olympic lifts, you snatch and click jerk. The power lifts, well, there's 3 lifts. Yeah. Do those. You can actually be a pretty good power lifter just by squatting, benching, and deadlifting, right? In fact, you can do a lot of good things.
Sure.
Just those 5 lifts I just said, you can be pretty good at a lot of. If you snatch, clean, and jerk, did the 3 power lifts, I'm pretty sure you're okay. Throw a farmer walk and run a hill once in a while. It's not a bad idea. Sure. So first and foremost is mastery, or don't make me look stupid.
Sure.
But you have to have both. You have to be looking at your program constantly and saying, am I exposing my athletes? Okay, jumping on Bosu balls and they hit the ground. I'm making them look stupid. That's why I like camp settings for, here we're going to throw the discus for a week. Everyone's a discus thrower. In fact, my friend Dave yesterday said, the thing I like about discus camp is I can say a phrase like, does anyone want to do a throw? And like 15, 20 hands will say, yeah, I do. Sure. We're not weird here.
Yeah.
So you want your gym setting to be like, if I come in and say, hey, I need help on my clean, no one looks at you and goes, you're a strange person. So that, yeah. And then the other areas in that article, well, the concept of community is the one that I think a lot of people miss, but they're getting better at it. You see a lot of stuff for wounded warriors and stuff like that. I hope they're all doing it for the right reasons.
Sure.
I'm always, I always try to remind people that we're still at war, and a lot of people wear the gear but don't serve the nation, kind of thing.
Sure.
I've often believed that if we should instantly reinstate the draft for everybody who's in favor of war.
Being a former Marine, I think that'd be fine with me. I think people have it better.
My brother Gary, we don't agree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But boy, we both absolutely agree. The more of a warmonger you are, the more children you should have in the service. But community. We're doing a lot of fundraising for this and that. I'm a big believer in it. But people like the communal nature of training. Yes. They like to belong to something. again, like I said, if I say here at discus camp, I'm gonna go work on my hammer, I would probably get 15 kids say, hey, can I go? I just want to watch it. And 2 or 3 at the end will go, will you teach me?
Sure.
We are communal.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the reasons I push a lot of people now who are opening gyms to try to think about, I got a friend who I'm going to actually help. She's opening a single gender gym with just kettlebells.
Okay.
Emphasizing mastery, emphasizing community. I think there's a touch of genius there.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And what's the third thing I talk about?
Results. but I think
so what you're saying is that there should be results.
Yeah.
It's to me it's the unwashed mass of the industry. Mm-hmm. What are your results? I do like, for example, Precision Nutrition just came out yesterday, the day before, with their annual, vote for, their transformation program.
Right.
Well, I go up and down the list. I look at every picture and it's like, dude, they're all. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Results. It's results based.
Yeah.
As a coach, I've been results based my whole career. It's funny because you go online and you can always tell these zit-faced little dorks. These little. I always love it when they'll go to YouTube comments. It's just like most people should be beaten instantly. But, you'll see these things like this guy will be throwing the discus. Guy throws a discus 218. Someone will comment, well, he's fat. It's like, no one cares. He just threw the discus 218. He is a good discus thrower. And if I help him, he gets a 228. We did something right.
Sure.
Results. And I think that's the mistake we make a lot of times with like dance classes. Now I got to be careful because one of my best friends teaches Zumba, and I've been using Zumba as my. But like she says, hey, women will come in and work, and they love it because they sweat a lot and they like to dance. And then I said, do they get results? And the answer famously was, next question. So you have it. Curves nailed it. Curves, right. I argue in the article still, Curves nailed it. Women didn't look stupid. It was very communal. The reason they're closing right and left was they didn't have results. So it's always results based. And I think that's why I think it really helps to have, as a strength coach, we're constantly, we're last hired, first fired, right?
Sure.
And, the team coaches, it's tough to deal with them because your football program, lost 6 games, so we fired the strength coach. It's not the strength coach's fault. You went for it on 4th down to 1, and they took the ball and shoved it down your throat, and you lost the game because you're an idiot. You'll notice some programs, there's a coach, I don't want to mention who he is, but let's just say he's about 30 miles west of where we're talking right now, who's very good for 2 years. He goes to a school for 2 years, and he's very good. And then has to, and because he believes that his strength coaches should have buckets, all over the facility so they can vomit. Now here's the thing, I can improve a team by making them vomit for about a year. The second year, they're going to start to look at each other and they're going to start to do that.
They know.
As a Marine, you guys probably had a tug of war early, right? Mm-hmm. And the losing team had to do 10 push-ups. And the next day, no one could straighten their arms out, right? Because they tried so hard to win the tug of war. And after the second time you do tug of wars, I don't mind. I'll pretend like I'm really struggling, but 10 push-ups are nothing. You start to make these little agreements. And so what happens is the second year, the strength coach says, we're all going to vomit. Okay, we're going to vomit. There. Oh, I must be working hard. I puked.
Sure. Yeah.
The third year, everyone's looking at each other like this is nonsense. So how do you... Results. Really, how do we look at things? And that's, I think, the real task, and that's what I'm kind of working on now. I call it 2 things. It's standards and gaps. Mm-hmm. And I think the number one thing I do if I come into your facility is I kind of look for what your gaps are.
Right.
Very often now, very few people. Usually it's farmer walks and authentic squatting. Right. Now you guys are powerlifters, so you guys have a sport where you're supposed to squat as much weight as you can.
Sure.
So I'm not going to comment on your squats because you're in a sport.
Because that's
the sport.
Yes.
And so but if you have a 35-year-old man come in, I might have him do a goblet squat with 28 pounds, because he needs the movement, the squatting.
Yes.
So once you get gaps, and just look at the gaps of this, the second thing is standards. What are your standards across the line? I already gave you one of my high school football standards. Mm-hmm. Division I football standard, I fully expect you to clean over 3.
Sure.
To be a division. At Wake Forest, their punchers clean 308. Punchers, for God's sake.
Sure. It's a fun
punchers. So then you look at standards, and then we look at standards across. And here's this whole long-winded point on results is, if you're meeting the standards across the line, why aren't you getting your goals? So Josh Hillis has this great insight about fat loss clients. He finds if a woman can do 3 pull-ups and can back squat or deadlift 135 for 5, almost universally, their body composition goals happen. I've talked to one. 3 pull-ups and a 275 deadlift for females, if they can do both, universally they're very attractive. Whatever you want.
Right.
Sorry, folks, delete that.
Right.
But they have the body composition goals.
Yeah. Makes sense.
If they don't, if a woman could do 3 pull-ups and deadlift 275 and is still obese, she's got some forearm strength and stuff.
Sure.
And so the thing is, if you don't get your goals, there's something big. There's a big rock you're missing. If you're a guy and you've got all these body, you can, like I always say with people, for guys, you can bench your body weight for 15, you can squat your body weight for 15, you can do 15 pull-ups, you can do farmer walks with body weight in each hand. Your problem isn't here in the weight room with me. You can't play at a Division III football team with those numbers. Your problem is not here in the weight room. Sure. Your problem is, well, what's your problem? Well, coach says and whatever that phrase is from there is the problem.
Yeah. Your number one ability to help you be a better football player is your ability to play football.
Play football.
And
well, if I had an athlete like that who didn't throw the discus far, my follow-up question is, well, how much throwing are you doing? Oh, every May I take 16 throws. Oh, here's an idea.
might want to increase that.
Increase that a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. And then I know we skipped over the second, but I just go I guess we'll go into the second and fourth as far as when you get to the point, especially with track and field, with this kind of a cyclical sport where, you have the competition at the same time of week, so sometimes the periodization is pretty true. And
but here, I disagree.
Okay.
If periodization works, why does not everyone at the Olympic trials have personal records?
Because it's such an individual.
If periodization works, we're just talking about some people in Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
Did you not know that Saturday at 9 o'clock you were to snatch and clean and jerk?
Yeah.
Oh, I've known for 6 months. Huh. Then why did you bomb out? Oh, yeah, well, see, 8 weeks ahead of time, one time my thumb was hurting. And so I instead of using 78 kilos, I used 74 kilos. Oh, that was the problem. See, I don't believe periodization works.
Okay.
Interesting. No, I'm all for it.
Right.
I think it's a great idea. I just wished it actually worked.
It's too many other factors.
Yeah. If it worked at the Olympic trials, everyone would have personal records.
Sure.
Now you can say, well, yeah, the discus. Okay, you're right, the discus. Wind dominated. But so everyone should throw phenomenal. I'm not being a jerk.
Right, no, it makes
I'm just
sense.
saying.
No, it's...
you go to powerlifting meets, how many people blow up on the platform?
Sure.
Are you guys about, what percent, do you have like a 20%? There's 20% of the guys that my platform lifting is far ahead of my gym lifts.
Right, and I think it changes. I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think you want, anywhere between 10, 20. I mean, you're going to have that, and especially with powerlifting nowadays, it's very specialized, especially with the equipped lifters. That's a whole new aspect that they have to kind of factor in when they get to the platform. And there's so many other there's so many other aspects of training that you add in that, again, you're right, especially with the linear-based periodization, it is difficult because there's too many things going on.
I always joke, I work with these NFL teams, and I say, well, you're going to peak for the Super Bowl this year? Whenever we start talking periodization, you're going to peak at the Super Bowl. And they laugh because there's 32 teams. 30 of them are so absent. Boy, if all 30 teams could play on the Super Bowl weekend, because when you work with professional athletes, they laugh about peaking.
Right.
Really? I have to wait until, they've got August games, September, October, November, December, January.
Sure.
Yeah, that's so okay. But please, I shouldn't have said I jumped in so hard.
It makes sense. And as for someone for competing, if you're looking at Olympic lifting or strongman, powerlifting, how do you, as far as with programming, what are your main goals? I know we talk about, I know you have your standard lifts that you think are going to be, obviously going to translate for no matter what people are doing, if it's the basic ones. But as far as progressing through a cycle, what's your standards as far as those like maybe benchmarks that you look at?
Yeah. So overall, I look at things in 2 or 6 week blocks, and I think you have to be really rigorous about. Okay, you've got to have clarity about what the weaknesses are. You have to have total clarity about. And then at the same time is the girl who brung you, dance with the girl who brung you. Right. What are your strengths? What are the word big rocks has become a cliche, and that's a good one. What are the big rocks that make a thrower or make a football player?
Sure.
You got to deal with those. Let me give you a quick example because it's easy. But like for football, we all know the season starts in August, right? So in the way I did things is January, February, if the kid's not wrestling, that would be a mass building program. And it's odd because people think you build mass 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's my experience that building lean body mass is one of the most difficult things you can do.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because, I'll get kids who say, well, I want to improve my 40 time and get bigger at the same time. It's like, those are two rough qualities to do at the same time.
Almost conflicting.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
So usually, I like, for example, Mass Made Simple, or a 6 week high squat, a lot of complexes, high squat program, so far away from the season that just that quality has a chance to develop. And it is true in football, the bigger engines, no one gets smaller in the fourth quarter, but people get a lot slower.
Sure.
So the bigger you are, the more. And if you just lay on a guy for 4 quarters, it wears on.
Oh yeah.
So after that, traditionally, I would like to then after we did that, there'd be like a 2 week, just general powerlifting, movements, and then we move into a 3 week, that what I call the Big 21, high load, high reps Olympic lifting, 3 sessions a week, 63 clean and press snatches and clean and jerks per workout, high volume, exhausting. You do it for 3 weeks. Workout 9 comes around. People have a hard time sleeping the night before because they're so nervous about the workout.
Sure.
Because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And then after that, though, if you can see, I'm pulling that rubber band right now. If this makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And so pulling that rubber band right about now, if you have a spring football or track and field, either way, then I would work on the quality of speed.
Right. So you're getting right into that.
Mass, power, speed, and then if you can repeat that one more time, if you can, that's it. We're high school
with
football.
The summer, yeah.
You try to do one more mass building thing, and then you try if you can. But if you can't fit in that extra Olympic thing, that's fine. But then one thing right before the season is what I call armor building, and that's when you'd want to do. I like the double kettlebell clean because the weight hits you. Front squats, zerchers. The weights are actually beating you up a little bit, tumbling, so you get used to hitting the ground. When you first wrestle, your nose will bleed every workout.
Right.
A week into it, it stops bleeding.
Sure.
Frank Shamrock calls that callousing, and I think the same is true about football. Early in the season, someone puts their helmet on your forearm, and it really hurts.
Yeah.
It just aches.
Yeah.
And late in the season, you're slapping your hand across someone's face mask and you don't notice it.
Right.
You do maybe 2 days later.
Sure.
I think for me it'd be mass, power, speed for football.
Right.
For a track athlete, it's really simple. I mean, it's like, get really strong, good for you. Now lighten up.
Yeah.
That's a 12-month program.
Right.
Whew, I'm exhausted. And my friend Glenn Passy told me one time, this is years ago, but he goes, we don't lift like you guys today. And I went, wow, okay. He goes, yeah, we just did the Olympic lifts. I thought, I love this guy. Yeah. And his idea was interesting, is that you would get as strong as you can in the off season. Mm-hmm. Of course he worked in a farm, so he would show up in the fall having done hay bales all summer.
Right.
So he'd been doing farmer walks and cleaning presses, cleaning jerks all summer.
Yeah.
It was called work. You know? And then he would start Olympic lifting. His idea was this. It would take him 3 workouts to get back to where he was the season before.
Makes sense.
And so there's an insight here is this. If I can be strong enough that it only takes me 1, 2, or 3 workouts to get back to where I was, then how little do I need to maintain that? This is what most athletes should think of. If I'm only 3 workouts out from getting right back into where I was, keep myself, it'll be a personal formula.
Sure.
But if I can go without lifting for 6 weeks, none. And then it's now I need 4, 5, 6 workouts. Okay, maybe I'm a guy who can take 5 weeks off from lifting.
Sure.
So if I can go, now this is heresy. You're going to get 1,000 emails from elite FTS guys. And I'll get all that, go heavier, go home. I'm going to get all 5-word sentences. But the idea is if you're an elite athlete, if you can just hold on to a quality, literally walk away from a quality, and not have to use time, nervous energy, and body resources, I think that's when the rubber band snaps. I think I can release. That's when you're snapping ahead.
Right.
That bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Now, I always tell people the mistake I see in most training programs is they have a bow and arrow, and as they let go of the arrow, they grab it with their left hand and try to throw it farther. I'm going to add more to the arrow. You just got to let that thing go.
Sure.
You got to let it, and that is the thing. Let it go.
And as you add more technical qualities with your practices, with your technical skills, and we have a lot of coaches that have talked about that before. When you add in your specificity of the actual sport you're doing, you can't just add more. You have to be able to take out, and usually that's that, general physical, preparation.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
you got to throw something out.
So, last question. I know that this will probably be a long question. I know it's hard, but yeah, really interesting about, you talked about some of the, your main movements that you like. You talked about in the past about teaching the hip hinge. But another thing that was interesting too, as far as with clients especially, you had a pretty unique evaluation battery of things of tests that you had that you thought were a little bit different than the standard functional movement screen. So maybe you can just kind of elaborate on that assessment, and then maybe, because I thought the hip hinge was part of that.
Do you want the hip hinge assessment or? Yeah, let's go. Okay, let's go through. Let's just go through the basics.
Okay.
I've simplified it down. The problem with the FMS, and I like it, is that if you ask Ray, he'll say, well, it's active straight leg and it's a shoulder mobility, and since every single person needs more work on that, okay, why do the test?
Sure.
So I use that Brazilian test where they get up and they go into the ground and get up. If people have questions, we can maybe put the reference in it. Because I find it really fascinating because there's a video of me coaching yesterday, and I'm really tired. Because discus camp and I'm watching myself get up off the ground, and in 10 days of coaching, 4 sessions a day, when I get off the ground, it's almost like crawl. Yeah. Right now, if you were to say to me, Dan, let's go Olympic lift at this meet, I would have to say, okay, I need to do something to get myself. Okay, so assessment number 1 is that little Brazilian study. And really, it's just how many points of contact you need to get up there. Really. Yeah, it's very simple. And the other day in this video, it was 27. The next one I like a lot is the height to waist. So you should have it should be 2 to 1. Okay. And if it's over that, that's, some people argue that's inflammation. That's some study they did at the NHI website talks about that's probably the best clue we have, the 2 to 1. The other one is we did the other day is a 2-minute plank.
Sure.
If you can't hold a 2-minute plank, why? What is it? And with the athletes I was looking at who are failing, it was the students who are carrying. Let's just say they drink a lot of Gatorade.
Yeah.
And the fourth one is real simple. That's just that if you can stand on one foot for over 10 seconds,
sure.
And that's it. You're done. And that's real simple. But once I get you there, then I do the movement assessments.
Right.
With the hinge, I call it the flying bird dog now.
Okay.
I was calling it the hinge assessment test, but
sure.
now. But I use several different bird dogs, really driving the heel back more to really teach that hinge movement. But I'm to the point now that, well, the hip flexor stretch in the bird dog series, you can call the hip flexor stretch half kneeling.
Yeah.
But the half kneeling in bird dogs and the flying bird dog,
yeah.
It's on a one-legged,
right.
Like that. What I'm using now is that's where most people are now. We're to the point that the hinge movement has become so ignored. We're both sitting in chairs right now.
Sure.
We're destroying our hinge movement.
Right.
And so if you have the hip displacement continuum, I put squats, goblet squat on the far end.
Right.
That's maximal hip bend and maximal knee bend.
Right.
A hinge is maximal hip bend and minimal knee bend, the least you can get. And really, when you hinge correctly, you should feel your hamstring stretch like a bow and arrow. When I do this correctly, many females, especially those with a dance background who had some Nazi ballet teacher, have learned to turn their hamstring off, and they just fold. They don't even know what the hamstring should feel like.
No tension.
Yeah. So when you do a hinge correctly, those hamstrings. Well, a correctly done Romanian deadlift, and that is the correct name for it. Mm-hmm. And I was there when Nico Vlad did them, so sure. He's a Romanian.
Right.
A correctly done Romanian deadlift where your butt is going back is a great way to feel that hinge, those hamstrings screaming at you.
Right.
And I think what happens is, this isn't all a rip on what you guys are doing with the box squat, but you guys, some of you in the powerlifting world, use the box squat to get the hamstrings to wake up, right?
Yeah, I just was at a session that was that's what we're talking about, yeah.
And the problem is that's fine, but you can, but it's also the way you jump and all that other stuff. So what happens is in our community, we've taken the squat and the hinge movement, and now we're putting it into one movement. People ask me why I don't teach good mornings to high school kids. It's like, well, you can. But you'll never get them to squat correctly again after that, because they'll become squatting good mornings.
Sure.
Good. We talked about that with the female athlete we're talking about. Is they can squat like this, straight up and down, or they can start doing that good morning, that deadlifty squat.
And you want to keep those two movements as away from each other on a continuous as possible.
I think so.
Makes sense. And just to finish up the three things for forwards, because I know from a college or any kind of team setting training, the hip hinge is really difficult to teach for people that have never done it. Now, I think the couple things you had was you would have a kettlebell, basically.
Sure.
Like a bat wing, and then you had some other ones.
Sure. Now you got to be careful about regressions, because you can regress yourself to the poor people. But the flying bird dog and the bird dogs and the and the half kneeling stuff, that is just like supportive material. Right. But the actual lifting regressions that like with a kettlebell, you can put it on the back of your neck and do the waiter bow, and that's a good one. But the problem is they got to push their butt back. Right. You can hold the kettlebell in your hands behind your butt.
I've seen you do that.
And that's the Romanian deadlift style, and you're trying to push your butt through that kettlebell. Right. And the third would be what I call the Bulgarian goat bag swing. It actually came from an article I wrote here, but and that's where you hold the kettlebell and you push it into your belly. Okay. And then you do your hinges that way. Right. I love kettlebell swings, and I love deadlifts, and I love snatches, and I love clean and jerks. But most people have never felt that hinge before. So what I like to do is get a person and really, I want them to wake up the next day with their hamstrings very sore. And then they'll have that illumination of, oh, my lower back doesn't hurt.
Sure.
So this is kind of the rule. If your lower back hurts, it's your fault. If your hamstrings hurt, it's my fault. Because that means we did it right.
Right.
Okay. So you want them to be as sore as they can, pardon me, in the hamstrings. Mm-hmm. You just want them to, oh, my hamstrings are killing me. And the answer is good. That means you've hinged correctly. Your lower back is safe, if you will, safe, whatever.
Right, sure.
But if you work with somebody who sits at a chair all day, which would be like a student or someone who has a job, which will cover most people.
Right.
Who drives a car,
yeah.
Sits and watches TV, they are just not that far from a back injury, from my experience. If they don't hinge correctly with those tight hip flexors, if they don't hinge correctly, we have issues. The other great thing is if you want to talk about butts, the glutes. If you train the hamstrings, we also know that the glutes are getting their work.
Right.
And I've had more than a few people, note that either about someone they like a lot in the gym or themselves that their butt not only moves better but looks better.
Sure. Yeah. Right, so, well, Coach, I know you have another session coming up, and I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us. I know this is the third time I've been out here to talk to you, and every time I've learned a ton, and it's just a great experience, and really do appreciate your time.
I got to tell you, but you guys are doing a hell of a job at your company too. And you're not giving me any reimbursement, but really what you guys are doing with the information you guys are putting out there, it's fantastic. And so, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing, and that needs to be stated. Huge fan of what you guys are doing. It's a great resource for the web, and you guys do good work.
That's it for this episode of the Elite FTS Sports Performance Podcast. Visit us online at elitefts.com. Follow us on Twitter at EliteFTS and like us on Facebook at /EliteFTS. Elite FTS. Live, learn, pass on.